Hello, welcome to today's HR Huddle, and Jen and I are glad to be here with you today. Um, we thought we would do some learning and exploring with you today. We have been studying and hearing a lot about it, some different meetings and conferences we've been attending this winter, talking to clients about this ChatGPT thing and the AI, background that it's using, and it's like all a buzz. I'm sure you've been seeing it or hearing about it. And so we have been learning about it. We've been studying it. We've been asking others about it. And so we thought we would talk about some of its applications, how it's being used right now, and maybe what people see it could possibly be used for in the future. And then we have some considerations and risks that we're maybe wringing our hands about a little bit and think we need to pay attention to, and think HR professionals and leaders in the firm need to pay attention to, and start writing some guidelines and communicating some guidelines and expectations around it, knowing it's going to evolve because this is so new. I think it really started to come about last year, although the technology has been around for several years and has been being built, for several years. We were just doing some research on what does GPT stand for, and it's generative pre-trained transformer. Basically, it's an AI, system that takes answers questions and compiles information that it's been gathering, and so it will facilitate writing things. And so maybe we start there, Jen, and talk about some of the ways it's being used. Or do you have anything else you want to say from a setup perspective before we jump there?
Well, I do want to I want to set up a few things. One is Tamera and Jen grew up in technology, but we are not technologists. We're leadership and management consultants and coaches. And so, we're not going to be the technical training that you're going to be getting on this in this session. We don't have time for it anyway, but we would not be the guys. We're exploring applications, and we're exploring, ways that we need to lead and manage around this super, super cool technology. That is exciting. We are worried that firms are either going to take an all or nothing stance or be super laissez-faire and not realize risks, but also we're hearing of firms like shutting it down, forbidding it to be used and that kind of stuff.
I think they did that with email and then social media and a whole bunch of other technologies.
2007, 8, 9, LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, not allowed on our servers, that kind of stuff, So we're hoping we can take kind of an optimistic, excited, but careful or measured stance related to this technology in our firms. And as HR leaders, you're the sometimes policymakers or rule communicators. And so we thought we better come with this subject to you. Not so much. Later, we could have another conversation about HR applications of this, and maybe we'll use a few examples here. But mostly, we were trying to get out ahead of us having any of your firms sound like you're fuddy-duddies or like old school or change resistant or anti-technology. We don't want to have anything that sounds like that. We also don't want to be so like it's nothing and we don't even need to get involved, that our people are accidentally using it in ways that could get them or us in trouble.
Right.
And so I think that's why we thought we better talk to you about it today. So that's a little bit on setup.
Yes. Well, and I think that's a great lead into one of the places it's being used, which is why you don't want to be fuddy-duddy. There's a lot of college students are using it for writing and, writing research papers or writing, different kinds of, letters, those kinds of, reports that they might be using. So a lot of students are getting access and using this and are going to come into your firms knowing about it and having used it. Marketers are using it to write social media posts, to write blogs, to write articles, to do educational emails on different topics. Like I could search, who's affected by ERC and how do you know if I qualify? And it will write you back several paragraphs on that topic. So the idea is you ask, good detailed questions, and then it will feed you back information, shortening the writing time by hours in some cases, depending on what it is. Or it could take, that blog you wrote, and you can say, write me 4 social media posts, one for Twitter, one for LinkedIn. I can get very specific like that. I could do job descriptions or job ads. So I could take a job description or a specific kind of job ad I'm looking for and say, write me a job ad for a, tax auditor at the staff level, 2 to 3 years experience. And it will write you back a job ad. You could say where you want it to be placed to get more narrow. Auditors, are using it in the audit process. They're talking about, I was reading, Jen, some places that they're looking at how ChatGPT affects the CPA exam and taking the CPA exam. And so there's just all kinds of, different places that's being used. What are some examples that you would add?
Well, I have to grab a hold of a couple of yours.
Okay.
So just from my my present day-to-day discussions. So I have several teachers in my life in the school system, whether they're in a public or private school system. And you mentioned the CPA exam and GPT technologies helping people maybe study for it or prepare for it or hopefully not cheat on it. So one of the challenges is that teachers are saying, well, first of all, if I create the right homework or the right assignment, ChatGPT will grade my papers and they'll grade them fast, so it's like cutting out down grading. But if I make it so ChatGPT knows the answers to my paper or my test or quiz or homework assignment, then kids can find those answers while they're filling it out potentially. So we have some challenges with making sure that while we're trying to use it to streamline, we're trying to make life more efficient, we're trying to cut out steps, we're trying to boost our productivity, and also to a great degree, GPT is based upon something called the large language model. And it's learning from us all the time, and it's learning from our words. The words we give it, become part of this massive learning model, and make it smarter and smarter and smarter. And we know that works because, and it's both like the whole thing gets smarter, but also my personalized version based on my username and password, based upon the things I put into it, the things that I ask, the data that I share with it, it's learning about me, and it's trying to then serve back things that are custom to me. And we know that works because those of us that travel, we know that AI has been following us, and it recommends things to us. It feeds me weather in multiple cities because it knows my big cities that I go to all the time. My Open Table app gives me restaurants in Nebraska where I live, but also in Palm Springs where I go frequently, and New York City where I am a lot. And, it's smart, man. It's personally smart. And so that's cool. And it also has privacy implications, and it has risk. You said something so smart there, Tamera. We could feed it some information and it will tell me more, like how could I write more about this blog, or what could my social media post be off this blog I wrote. So I cut and paste my 9-paragraph blog into ChatGPT and say, hey man, I need 5 Twitter posts off this thing to help promote my blog. And it might give them back and they're great, but it also just took my 9-paragraph blog into its large language model. And I don't know if I maintain my copyright on that. I mean, I've asserted copyright if the blog was published, but is it going to feed those same ideas, the same organization and structure, the same 6 points I made related to my topic of my blog to the next person writing a blog on that subject, and they write something that's just darn close to mine because they used the GPT to produce it? And then what are we going to get into? Like, I believe we are going to get into, if we haven't already, copyright disputes because things are showing up twice or three times or many times because of the way that the model works.
Well, and plagiarism and sourcing, it doesn't automatically source or consistently source where it's pulling that information. It just feeds it back to you. And if you go and ask for sources for it, it can give you sources, but you do have to go check on each of those links. First of all, they might not be valid, but also they might not be accurate. And while I'm saying that, there is like a human intervention to read what it gives back to you to make sure it's accurate. We can't just assume it's not far enough along to be like, okay, it's copy ready, I got to read it and make sure it applies. I also need to read it and make sure it's accurate. But then there's the sourcing, which you were just pointing to from a copyright perspective. What are my sources? And you go back to the teachers, it's like a teacher's worst nightmare, is how are you sourcing? And not no plagiarizing. And if it was already published by somebody, gosh, that feels like that's going to get murky now. Can I publish it again if it's in fact in that now domain, the ChatGPT word domain that I have access to it? I ask it a question, it'll feed it back to me. So, and right. I did see an example of that from SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management, was writing about it and said we have to be careful feeding it information for that reason, Jen, but especially on employee privacy information, or if we want to write a letter, maybe we need to deliver some news, or we're going to do some layoffs. It will be out there. People can find it and search what is Convergence Coaching doing about layoffs. And if there's something out there, it can pull it back. Or in the medical field, HIPAA. I could get my doctor's report so much faster, like you said, efficiency, but gosh, that violates all kinds of laws that could get us into trouble.
And Tamera, so we can't copyright anything it gives us as copy if we use it exactly in the order it gives it to us. I think we might try, but I'm just going to tell you that's public domain stuff coming to us. And we can't just drag it into Word and say, this is mine now, and I'm the author. It was authored through that large language model, and it's public domain. And so that's, now plagiarism, I'm not that worried about, because like on our team, we have a plagiarism policy, and we're supposed to run things through a plagiarism third-party site to make sure there is no plagiarism if we get copy from a third party. We know how to not plagiarize. We know we're content developers. We create IP. And if we use anybody else's ideas because they're just so amazing, we always give attribution. We use quote marks. We give a link to wherever we got it. So we're pretty careful about that. But still, you can run your ChatGPT through a plagiarism website, and there's lots of them, and they're free. Most of them are free. And most teachers already use those sites. I know my kids had to create their documents and then submit them to the plagiarism site, and then the plagiarism site submitted it to the teacher. So, they were forced to address any of that before it went to the teacher. That was way before AI. Right. And so that's been around for a while. But I think that, this issue of privacy and confidentiality cannot be overemphasized. And in accounting, we have sensitive client information. We have privacy requirements. And, most of us, like at Convergence, we sign confidentiality and non-disclosure agreements with our clients. We put them in place on purpose because we want them to trust us with their information, and we want to trust them with ours. And so if we're all like cutting and pasting that stuff into a GPT engine and saying, hey, I've got to write an email to this client delivering bad news because they are going to owe $118,000 when, they probably thought they were paid in full, and this is a bad surprise. So I, put a bunch of data in there. Maybe I don't give them the client name, but I put enough data that I start to make it so that if this same client could get their data back, and we've had on the world stage this happen where client confidential information, not in accounting, not to my knowledge in accounting, but in other industries where people have used ChatGPT and they've fed it data that they shouldn't have, And then that data leaked out and other people could access it, and it got published in the press. And gosh, that's our worst nightmare, you know? So at Convergence, we have, you know, we produce IP, and we have recorded teaching that we do. And we were talking about updating some recorded teaching, and we were going to search the recordings for certain words. And all of a sudden it hit me like, wait a minute, we were going to use AI to do that. We don't want to make some human sit there and listen to the whole recording and listen for the words. You know, we want to use AI to do that. But boy, we're working hard to find the right engine that commits that our property remains our property, and that it will destroy those recordings after it finishes our project. And if we can't find that right now, we're not going to do it, because that's our IP, and we don't want to give it up to the rest of America to do whatever it wants to do, or the rest of the globe to do whatever it wants to do with it. So, you know, it's gray, and we're novices. I mean, we're really at the beginning of our learning. So we're trying to be excited about it and say, how can we use it in a way that helps us and helps others, but doesn't hurt us? Right. And so anyway, I think that that's the conversation that needs to be being had at your firms, because the staff are stoked. And frankly, they were already using tools like this in school. And so they're thinking, how can I get this to cut hours? How can I get this to take steps out of this project? We're so overwhelmed and so squeezed. How can we use these technologies to get this stuff done faster? And we want to help them figure that out. So we don't want to throw a wet blanket over it. No. But we have to teach them about IP, and we have to teach them about copyrights and plagiarism, and also referential data and authoritative data, and making sure that we're not taking what we get off of this thing as verbatim, accurate, correct. And I told Tamera the first example that I got was, I just asked ChatGPT who I was. Who is Jennifer Wilson of Convergence Coaching? And then I cut and paste the bio and sent it to my team. And some of the bio was our bio from the website. So that's not exactly original. If I said, hey, marketing person, I need a new short, bio for speaking, and they were going to go out and write this for me, and they ChatGPT'd it and gave me back my own web copy, that would be gory, so that would be not valuable. But more importantly, it said I wrote a technology book, which I did not. And it even had the name of the book, and I don't know who wrote that book, but it wasn't me. And just some goofy stuff in there that just wasn't valid. And so, we have to take what we're getting with a grain of salt. And if we're going to use it to produce client deliverables, we better make sure it's sourced, it's authoritative, and that we're not plagiarizing.
Yeah. Well, you might be sitting here wondering, oh my gosh, now what do I do with all this? And if I go say this to the partners, they're going to freak out and they're going to lock it down.
Banned.
So
no, you don't want to do that.
We've done, we'll just share with you what we've done. And a couple places you might start here is we've said for our team, let's use it and explore it, but we're going to put questions in and take information out, and then do everything that Jen just said, and that we've been talking about, to verify it, to look at the source, to make sure it's authoritative, give credit where credit is due, all of those things, so that we can learn about it, and so we can see ways that it can help us make us be more efficient, be smarter, all of those things. So that's one place, versus putting our information out there unless certain criteria are met, where they will, they'll sign an NDA, they'll protect our information, they'll get rid of it afterwards, those kinds of things. So you have to go read their agreements and, what is happening with these different providers. The other thing is, go find out who on your team is using it and how they're using it from a show me. I want to learn, not from a judgy, you're going to be in trouble. We're learning about this. So come from, just like we started today, we want to learn together. And so, I hear you're using it, or you've shared that you're using it. Can you show me how? I want to see what some of the benefits you're receiving, what does it look like, just what the interface is, whatever the questions are that you might have. So those are a couple of things that you could do.
Yeah. And I would add that there are a bunch of application providers who have built applications on top of this GPT technology, or using OpenAI or other tools like it. And they have thought of these issues. They provide a mask. They commit that your intellectual property that you create under your account stays yours, things like that. That we may not want to use this open source. Everybody is out there on ChatGPT dumping tons of stuff into it. We might want to use these third parties that have created customized apps, and there are a bunch of them. And many of you larger HR practices, larger firms, you probably already have some self-service chat bots and things like that, and you're using this tool to have it read your employee handbook and answer questions of employees self-service and things like that, which is a cool application. Again, I love the application as long as my employee handbook doesn't become everyone else's employee handbook.
Right.
Unless I want to share it at an alliance conference or something, I don't want to, have our IP, our hard fought, hard developed HR tools and resources become public domain. So they're just, there are some third party apps that protect against that. And that's the place to head. But again, this is nuts. None of us reads license agreements. I mean, I really don't think people, we just click through, set up account, click through, pay the money, let's go. And man, stop and read the license agreements on this AI to figure out what's happening with what you're putting in it or what you're allowing it access to.
Right.
For sure.
Yes. So more to come. We will continue to engage in this conversation. We'll share what we're learning. We would love for you to share what you're learning and experiencing. So get in contact with us, in social media, email, however. But we'll follow up as we go. But we've just been doing a lot of talking about it, and it's been coming up in so many conversations and reading about it. We thought, gosh, we better make sure we're bringing you along as well. So that was our objective today. So otherwise, we hope you have a great week. Let us know if there's any other topics that you are watching and wondering about. We would love to bring them here to the HR Huddle, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.